Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Chris Stankovich. I'm very excited to be with you guys here today. I'm more of a complimentary piece to the basketball side of things. Learned a lot from Coach B here today. Really enjoyed hearing what he had to say. My background is in the field of sports psychology, and I just want to say a few things. I grew up in Northeast Ohio, very blue-collar part of the state. If you're not familiar, grew up with a family of laborers. I was the first to go to college, first to go on to graduate school, graduated with my doctorate degree from Ohio State University, and I've learned the value of hard work. I've learned the values, the life skills needed to get through adversity and to reap the fruits of your labor. And so I guess that's the message I'm trying to send today, is a positive one, that you really can do a lot of great things when you put your mind to things, and you never stop, and you always keep going, and there's adversity every day along the way. So I want to hit on just some basic points, some of the things that I do with athletes at my practice. I'm very fortunate today that I see student athletes all the time. I see pro athletes. I do a little bit of media work and here locally, a segment called The Sports Doc on NBC. And really just spend a lot of time talking about the life skills and the things necessary for success. And I'd like to talk a little bit about those things today. The first thing I'd like to mention is a lot of times people ask me, what is mental toughness? I would argue that everything we've talked about here today is mental. I haven't heard Coach say anything about X's and O's. I'm sure Coach probably won't either. So I think this is all mental, and it goes to everything that he said today, not getting caught up with the rankings, the attitude, the respect you have for the game. I mean, these are all the things that go beyond what you do on the court. And in fact, I'd like to just share a quick story with you how this hit home for me many, many years ago. This was back in the early 90s, and I was just kind of beginning my career. I was still in graduate school, and I was down in Florida for baseball, spring training. I know we're here for basketball, but I'm a big baseball fan, and this is baseball playoffs, right? If you're missing this stuff on TV, you got to stay up late because it's really great. The Royals are going places somewhere. I never thought since 1985. But I was down there, and I remember seeing a lot of guys in spring training having the initials DBTH on their hats. And after I saw it time after time after time, I finally asked somebody, what does that mean? And the guy told me, a pro player, a pretty well-known pro player at the time, said, don't believe the hype. And I thought, wow, that's really good. I mean, here's a guy who's established. He can believe all the hype he wants. He's getting paid good money. And he says, 2 feet on the ground, don't believe the hype. And I thought that was really powerful. And, I try to carry that with me today, no matter what happens, good or bad. I think the point was well made with Scooney about don't get too high, don't get too low, but just keep focused. And I just wanted to share that with you. Attitude is a choice. The kids, they get to make this decision every day, so do we. I'll share a quick story. This morning I was up at about 5:10 a.m. I've got a 5-month-old at home who's sick. My wife took him to urgent care. You better believe I'm tired right now. I'm on about 4 cups of coffee, but this is where I am, and I'm happy and privileged to be here. And so, you choose that attitude. And I hope that you share that with your kids every day, no matter what's expected of them in the classroom, basketball practice, the other community activities, volunteering. They get to choose that. And, we live in a country today, and this is tough. It's a tough message because every night you turn on TV, there's seemingly a pill for everything. We've got kids more medicated today than we ever should. And I think we've gotten away from just the common sense stuff, having a good attitude, understanding that life is difficult. I remember a book I read many, many years ago, The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. The very first sentence of the book, 3 words, life is difficult. It is. And I think when you start from that point, everything else gets better. Your kids are chasing a dream, some of them, to one day become a professional athlete or even an elite level college athlete. I don't know if you're aware of the data, and I say this not to be pessimistic, but I think it's important to be realistic. You're looking at about 6-7% of all high school student athletes will go on to play at the college level. That includes full ride scholarships, partials, Division III. Even the high water mark, 7%. That means 93% fall out. It's really important that they learn the life skills that they're picking up each and every day. In fact, I have written books on this about the importance of athletic transferable skills. It's the skills that these kids learn every day in their sport. Being a great team member, setting goals, being motivated, developing resiliency. These skills are invaluable outside of sports. And for most of the kids competing in sports, that's where they're going to use these. Very, very few of them are going to go on and have these opportunities at the Division I or even the professional level. And again, that's just looking at the data. So it's important to know that. How do you go from good to great? You know, a lot of your kids are good right now. How do you get to that next level? One way you do that is by using the Socratic method. If you ask the right questions, you'll get the right answers. And, you know, I think that's so powerful. Again, not just for your kids, but for all of us. You know, if I run into a challenge, I ask myself, like, how do I get better? What do I need to do? Who do I need to learn from? And that's how you get better. One other note on this. Sometimes you'll hear kids say that they can't do something. You know, I can't run that last lap. I can't do that last sprint. I can't do, you know, that last problem. Remind them, in my world, I can't means I won't. And that's really hard, because when you own I won't, that doesn't feel nearly as easy and comfortable as I can. So, you know, just something to think about. Kids today have a lot of pressures. It's a lot different than when I was growing up. We played a new sport every season. It wasn't social media. There wasn't a lot of this hype. It's very, very different today. Kids that I see, young kids, are really, really challenged by all the people coming at them, all the stuff being written about them, good or bad. It's a very, very different animal today. A lot of the kids specialize today. Many of the kids that you have in this program have specialized in basketball. It doesn't mean it's good or bad, but there are trade-offs. When you specialize in anything and do it year-round, you run a higher risk of burnout. It becomes a job. Every research poll that I've ever come across in the sports psychology literature, the number one reason why kids play sports, any guesses? It's real simple. Even simpler than that. What was the first time you ever played sports? When you were a kid, what did you do? To have what? Fun. That's it, to have fun. And when we lose that focus, that's when we lose that intrinsic motivation for playing for the love of the game, when it starts to become a job. You know, it loses a little bit of that luster. So it's really important that we understand that if you do decide to specialize, there's trade-offs there. You need to be aware of that. You might see that mental fatigue that could turn into staleness or full-blown burnout. When you have that, in my world, that sometimes leaves a youngster open to doing things that he or she never would do. Using drugs, alcohol, reckless behaviors. A lot of that stuff comes about just from being burned out. And again, these are not bad kids. In fact, just a couple years ago, I started with some folks here in Ohio, the Department of Education, Ohio High School Athletic Association, and the Department of Health in Ohio, raising awareness to heroin and prescription pain pill abuse with student athletes. And many of these kids get caught up in it because of the pressures. It's not like they went out seeking to become a drug addict, but they get really stressed out. They don't feel that they can speak. They don't want to let their parents or coaches down. They get boxed in, and sometimes, in some cases, they turn to these things. So being seen is a pressure. Being marketed, these rankings that Coach talked about, I hear it from kids, not just in basketball, from all the different sports I see. You know, they're constantly aware of that. Again, social media, you have a good game, bad game, somebody's talking about it. Leadership and avoiding burnout and injury are other things. One thing I do want to mention to you, to take this with you as well, everything that happens to us in life, we get to make a decision whether we look at it as a challenge or a threat. So if your child is asked to do one more thing at practice, or take on a more difficult class load in the classroom, or go to camps and clinics next summer that seem overwhelming, you know, your child gets to make a decision in that moment. Is he or she challenged by it and really equipped to move on, or are they threatened by it? And that's that fork in the road, because when we're challenged, our motivation increases, our attitude is positive, our focus becomes sharp, our resiliency is galvanized. But when we're threatened by things, we start to step back a little bit, and we get defensive. And instead of playing to win, we play to avoid losing. And so again, all that starts with just a decision in your mind. And there's nothing psychotic or mental about it. It's just making good choices and knocking down the right row of dominoes. Character counts more than ever. Some of the kids that I saw here today, I'm sure, are tremendously talented. I can tell you, and I know Coach can speak to this, our coaches here today, character counts. You know, especially if you're talking Division I level, where 4 years of tuition money is going to be put into somebody. Nobody wants someone who's going to be around for one term, partying, and gone. And so character is really, really important. And encourage your kids, get involved. Take rigorous classes. Get involved with activities around their school and other things that they're required to do. Maximize these experiences. Volunteer. It doesn't mean that they have to spend an entire summer, 10 hours a day doing something. It might just be one day a week for a couple hours, helping out somewhere, developing that college portfolio. And when a college coach meets your son or daughter and says, why should I pick him or her? You want your child to be ready. Well, in addition to my basketball skills, let me tell you about some of the things I've done. I created an activity at school. Summers, I'm not only playing basketball, but I'm also involved helping the homeless or another mission. I mean, talk about those things. Really be confident about them. A couple other things, I'm going to turn this over. I think resiliency is probably the biggest takeaway from today. You know, the old saying is not how many times you get knocked down, but how many times you get up. And if you really study the great ones in anything, and one of the things that I try to do every year is pick up a biography or an autobiography, if I can, of someone I admire. It can be a sports person, it can be a political world leader, just a person who's successful in his or her craft. And if you do this, the amazing thing, and the last great book I read was the Steve Jobs book, the former Apple founder, deceased now. What a terrific book. And if you read this, here's a guy who made a mark on society arguably like no one else in our lifetime, if you really think about all the places where his footprint has been. But you read the biography about him, and you read far many more stories of frustration and failure and stress and adversity. But those are the stories we don't usually pick up. When we see great people, we tend to think, oh, he's just naturally gifted. You know, I teach college classes, and I've been doing so for over 20 years. And it's a tough sell sometimes to my struggling students, but it's reality. You know, my students that sit in class and get C's, D's, F's, when they look at the A students, you know what they like to say? Well, she's just smarter. Or he came from a family of money, of course. I don't agree with that. There are examples where there is a genetic difference, I think, where someone just really is naturally gifted. But in most of these cases, they just want it more. They're the ones that sit in the front row. They buy the book, they read, they ask questions, they won't let me leave the classroom. When the class is over, they're waiting in the hallway with more questions. I walk away saying, that person's got it. You know, I don't care what his or her natural ability is, that person's going somewhere. Conversely, my students who struggle, they sit way, way in the back. If they come to class at all, they don't buy the book, they don't ask questions, they don't engage in the process. So it really doesn't matter how much natural ability they have, they're really not putting out the effort necessary to be successful. So stress, adversity, these things are a part of life. If you have a son or daughter who is a self-proclaimed perfectionist, shake that out of them this weekend. Tell them, don't say that ever again. None of us are perfect. If you say you're a perfectionist, you have set the bar impossibly high. You can never, ever achieve that. Strive for excellence. That is realistic. You can strive for excellence every day. You can get better every day. And you know, some of these things you sit here and say, oh, that's common sense, but I'll tell you what. You employ these strategies, you see a world of difference. So some folks will walk out of here and think, oh, that makes sense, but not use it. Others will walk out of here and on the drive home tonight, talk to their kid and say, you know, I've heard you say about being a perfectionist. That's impossible. Let's set up a new paradigm here. How do we really go for success? One last thing, I think this is really important too, and I try to teach kids this when I see them in the practice. I picked this saying up many, many years ago. I wish I could tell you who I would attribute this to, but I don't know. So I'm not plagiarizing. I got it somewhere, but it's great. Do the next thing best. Do the next thing best. And if we really do that, you talk about razor-sharp focus. So think about this. Right now, you're here. If I'm on that side of it, the next thing is I want to take any notes I can from these great people here today. You know, and I want to put all of my focus here. For me, you are my focus right now. Now, when I leave shortly, I won't be thinking of you. I'll be thinking about my sick kid that I'm going home to. I'm going to put all my effort there, right? I mean, that's doing the next thing best. And when you do that, again, performance goes through the roof. When your performance goes through the roof, you feel more confident. When you feel more confident, you engage in different activities, and it just becomes who you are. So those are a few of my thoughts today. I'll be around on the panel. I'll turn this back over to Andreas. I really appreciate your time today, and I hope you get the most out of the camp today. Thank you very much.